Christian, good to see you. Thanks for making a bit of time to come and have a chat. I know you've been busy gardening because you were just telling me, which sounds very exciting. Just to kick off, what I'd like to do is ask you about something that you said to me last time we spoke. You said to me that a green pitch is not necessarily a great pitch. What did you mean by that, and why is it important to your business?
What I mean with that is coaches, players, and others might disagree that a green pitch, which is in fabulous conditions from the perspective of a grounds manager, is actually good. Perhaps because they lost, or perhaps because they wore the wrong boots, or perhaps because it just looked good and it didn't react in the same way. But unraveling that mystery is essentially the core to what we are doing at Turf Coach.
And how have you, I mean, just give us a flavor of how you've done that, because that's a really
Mhm.
interesting idea.
Well, the starting point was to say, let us support the grounds manager in his day-to-day operations. And when I mean support, I mean actually support. So how do we cut time to him, and make sure that he has data to prove what intuitively or even from experience he knows, but to prove it and to actually make the arguments towards coaches and players. That was the starting point, let's put it like that. And nowadays, I would say that those that at least use our system actively are more on a level with coaches and players, and actually discussing what the home turf advantage could be. If you play against City, you might not want to play at 20 mil, but you might want to play at 26 mil. And there are fine nuances that I could go all about, which grounds managers certainly know, but now they can communicate this in numbers and stats so that coaches and players actually understand them.
Okay, so let me just to clarify this. What you're
Yes.
saying is that the quality of the grass
Hmm.
that the football match is played on, can
Yeah.
have an impact on whether the team is are going to succeed or not. I mean, to what extent? I mean, how much of an impact
Hmm.
can the pitch have?
So there are studies which looked at, for example, how the pitch conditions can affect the running speed. Yeah, and they came to the conclusion that 20% of the performance can be related to the pitch conditions. And
Right.
that's a pretty steep figure.
Yeah.
Now, if we look at it from a player perspective, there's obviously the acceleration, there's the top speed that you can reach based on how hard the field is. There might be slippage risk, which is related to the traction, of course, also to the boot worn, to the player position type, and the
Yes.
traction of the pitch itself. And then you have the whole ball aspect. So how is the ball roll? How's the ball speed, and how's its ball bounce? And now, these are the obvious ones that we model in order to give a competitive edge to the clubs that work with us. And beyond those, you can obviously also model, for example, the effects of light, of certain weather conditions that might appear during the match, and
Right.
other aspects.
Okay. So all that cumulative
Mhm.
information can help a football team win a game, is what you're saying. Let me ask
Yeah,
you, to what extent, I mean, because everyone's talking about AI at the moment, to what
yeah.
extent are you using AI to process what must be vast quantities of data? I mean, given what you said, I mean, just tell us a bit about that.
Yes, I think what we start off with is first of all we have maintenance data, which I would
Okay.
call uh, essential. Because so what was, let's say, the common standard in the industry before we appeared was to take measurements of the field, yeah,
Yeah.
measurements of the pitch. Now, if you take the measurements at 9 in the morning and then you water and the match is actually at 5 p.m. and there's weather happening in between, how much relevance do these 9 a.m. measurements really have? Let me put it as questionable. Then so we added to the measurements, we added the maintenance that happened in between, as well as the weather that happened in between, and
Okay.
then other things such as shade, pitch buildup, grass species, etc. And now, how does AI come into this? Well, first of all, we compared how the pitch, what has happened on the pitch agronomically, as to how it behaved in terms of performance. Yeah, so to these aspects such as player feedback, but also how did it behave in terms of ball behavior. Now that's where our models were derived from, and that's how we can model in real time and give this predictive information to coaches and players how a pitch will behave. But this information is also relevant to grounds managers. So, for
Yeah.
example, let's say a lot of players complained about the pitch, which looked objectively to green and fantastic. well, there might be issues with thatch development, yeah, which means that the stud penetration was not as high and therefore higher slippage risk. And that you can obtain by having a lot of player feedback, but you can also obtain this information potentially by looking at how much fertilization rates were, whether there was potentially over-fertilized and therefore high thatch buildup, and therefore you could have reduced fertilizer input and had a higher playability and a higher quality field.
Yeah. And presumably, I mean, the only place to get this data from is you. Is that fair? Or does it come from other sources? I mean, are you the only people that can provide that
I would say that grounds managers that collect a lot of data and perhaps work with a lot of Excel tables could have compiled a lot of the information themselves, but the numbers is of course a different story, because what we do is we do this for, well, let's say over 100 clubs and a lot of fields. Whereas if you do that for your own field and for your own 8 pitches, you might be fairly correct on your 8 pitches, but that might not be transferable to other sites.
So
and
you've
other
got
pitches.
comparative data, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah. Now I know that you like gardening, because we were just talking about it before we came on. I mean, what was it that kind of set you on this path? Because it's a bit of an odd career move, if you like. I mean, I think it's a really clever proposition, but I mean,
thank you.
I would never have thought to myself when I was growing up, I'm going to collect data about football pitches. I mean, that's just an odd.
Yeah.
What set you on this path? Where did the idea come from?
Well, so prior to starting Turf Coach, I had worked in a company which had developed a hardware and software solution. So basically, soil moisture sensors, weather stations, plus a dashboard for avocados. And now in the avocado business, it's relatively, it seems funny that I'll say this, but it's somehow comparable to the business of turf, because we only eat one type of avocado. We all eat the Hass avocados. Now, if you go to Mexico, if you've ever been to Chile, where in Chile is where I started working with this avocado company, they have several types of avocados. But the one that we only eat is one species, meaning if you can create what we call a digital twin, kind of a replica, what the species likes, how it likes to grow, then you can kind of nail it and offer good advice. And so that company, while I was working with them in the first investment round, got bought up. And then I took that deck, and I had several ideas in my mind, but I took the deck, and amongst others, I sent it out with a new proposition to 4 Bundesliga clubs. Back then I was living in Berlin. So just the 4 Bundesliga clubs. And within 24 hours, all 4 grounds managers of these clubs had responded. And I had only sent out the email to info@. And then I went on to visit them in person and to see how their day-to-day work was. And I realized relatively quickly that there was no bespoke software that had been developed for them that actually served their purpose. A lot of them were using softwares perhaps from the golf business, which were also mostly built by an agency. So there was no one who actually sat down and continuously improved based on feedback, a bespoke system for grounds managers. And that became our initial target. And relatively quickly, we also realized that there was, of course, a mismatch between having a grounds manager working analog because he didn't get any system that works for him with way too little budget, and the 200 million in assets as players walking outdoors and training. And I realized that essentially grounds managers deserved higher budgets and better salaries and a bespoke system, and players would need to use this competitive advantage.
Yeah, and I can see why that would be helpful to people. Let me just to go back to the thing about growing avocados. I mean, that's also a pretty odd career move. I mean, what was the jump? I mean, how did you get into the avocado world?
So prior to that, I finished my studies in the UK, at Cambridge University, and then I moved and got an offer at the United Nations in Chile. Now, for background purposes, I come from that kind of a background of diplomatic services, so I knew my ways around pretty well.
Okay.
And I worked at the United Nations for 2 years in sustainable land use. And in that time, I was predominantly looking at digital solutions for intelligent land use as well as climate change. And during that time, I got to know that avocado business because I interviewed them in Chile. And that was my, let's say, career path down the road of sustainable land use, plants, and digitalization. And yeah, from there jumped back to my passion, which was essentially sports. Yeah, I grew up all over the world playing football all over, so I know how much of a social connector it can be. It helped me integrate when I went, for example, I moved to Namibia when I was 10 years old and played football there, and it was something that crossed all boundaries of xenophobia and whatsoever that you might have had in those countries. And so for me, it's always been a social connecting point.
Yeah. No, I totally get that, and it's an interesting sort of route because that you would have acquired lots of interesting bits of knowledge. So it doesn't surprise me really. Let me ask you,
Yeah.
what is it? I mean, so you've got all this data about football pitches
Yes.
that you provide to grounds people to
Yes,
help
groundsman.
them look after their, the footballers to help give the company a competitive edge. I mean,
Yeah.
what is it? Are you just give us a sense of where you're going with this? I mean, what are you building towards? I mean, is this something that's applicable, for example, to tennis, grass courts? I mean, where are you going with this?
It is applicable to tennis because the biggest lawn tennis tournament in the world is one of our clients. So yes, and of course it's applicable, but always within the context. So, for example, if we talk about Wimbledon, they will be making sure that their turf has a particular behavior, which is, of course, according to lawn tennis. So, if you would have the football pitch being as hard as the tennis court, well, pretty counterintuitive and not really productive, not really what you're targeting at. Also, Wimbledon has way less of a time frame to essentially bring turf back to life, right? Because they have very, very short time frame, a lot of games. Whereas in a football pitch, you might have a match every week or every 2 weeks, depending on what you play internationally, whether your women's play in the stadium and so on. So different objective. And same also if you're talking about horse racing, right? Different objective. Horses weigh a lot more than humans. So different objectives. And that being said, I would say as for the context itself, fertilization, irrigation, disease prediction, and disease identification, and these factors, these are all common. You can apply them as much to golf as you can apply them to football. But the context does play a matter as to what's the objective of the grounds manager or greenkeeper in his area and what he wants to essentially achieve.
Yeah, so lots of applications is what you're saying. So lots of different sports.
Well, yes, of course. I mean, if we look at sports, right, we're talking about rugby, we're talking about lawn tennis, we're talking about football, polo, American football, partially, golf, of course, huge, and these are all different sports and where our application can operate. Up until date, we've been not in the golf space, but primarily focusing on all the other sports. Cricket, for example, another big one, which we haven't entered yet, but are definitely looking at.
Yeah. Lots of opportunities here. And let me ask you, what would success look like? So let's say, I don't know, 5 or 10 years down the track, what would success be to you? I mean, where do you want to get to?
I would like to elevate the role of turf, essentially, and the grounds manager and the greenkeeper in the eyes of the sport. So I think it's completely a black box. The fact that most of the coaches don't even know that they can tweak, let's say, grass height according to what they want to play and player tactics, for me is a missed opportunity. And in that course, I want to elevate the role of grounds managers and greenkeepers because I believe they're just often enough we call them unsung heroes, but I would just say it's underappreciated, and it's because often enough the information is not being put outside to someone else within the club. So I know a lot of grounds managers that have gotten a beaten just because coach had a bad day or some star player had a bad day, but in reality the pitch was immaculate, and I want to counter this with data and with our platform to actually give the support needed. And I think that is the road where modern groundskeeping is anyhow going.
Yeah.
And
the thing that was going through my mind as you were speaking was that it's an underappreciated resource because there's lots of information to extract from that, which will create lots of value. So I think that your way of describing it is pretty good.
Yeah, and I also think, for example, there's a sustainability case to it. There's a case of actually using resources efficiently, and there's just a lot which one can still make with this. So another one would be, for example, that players have all different kind of feet, yeah, and still the norm is that they wear a soft ground or firm ground or mixed ground boot just for different pitch conditions. And there's not even a personalized recommendation as to your foot shape, your gait type, your position on such a pitch should be wearing that boot. Now, I believe that this is routes where our data can become, of course, important. And I believe that other companies will also develop towards that direction. Another thing would be training areas, the fact that most of the coaches repeat their training on the same goal mouth, and then they're surprised that the goal mouth goes brown. So there's quite some things to be done. And if we look at cities, I believe that we should be able to have more sports grounds with natural turf that have biodiversity benefits and at the same time benefit society in enabling us to do more sports. I mean, anyone who lives in a big city knows the lack of green areas and outdoor sport areas is a real problem.
Yeah. No, so I mean, what a great thing to be working towards. I mean, I love that. I mean, I like sport like you, so I can see the benefits there. Let me ask you about being the CEO. One of the things that interests me at this precise moment in time, there is so much change going on. There's all the kind of geopolitical stuff with, people being at war and tariffs, and then there's all the stuff that's happening with AI, changing the way businesses work and what have you. I mean, what's your take? I mean, what does it mean to you to be, if you like, a decision maker in the age of AI? I mean, how do you see that situation that you're in, if you like?
I think that part of what one has to accept nowadays in new reality is that I need experts to basically work with AI, and starting from our software developers. So coding is, of course, an area where AI is very advanced.
Yeah.
And we have senior developers that have potentially at some time 5 to 6 to 7 agents running at the same time.
Wow.
And then they control the work of the AI because, shit in, shit out is one of the things you say. Yeah, pardon my language, which basically means that if you feed it very bad product requirement documents and you have no idea what the code is just coming out with, and then you see a dashboard which looks all fancy and you click on the first button and it breaks, well, mate, not really productive, right? So that's where you need senior staff that can control that. And I would say the same counts for if you want to come up with agronomic models or if you want to come up with support. You need experienced people to control, and then they become a lot more efficient. Now, what that means for me as the leader of a team is, on the one hand, to encourage people to use these tools, not blindly force anyone, but encourage people to use these tools. And on the other hand, it also means to accept that I have to question my own decisions all the time, right? So whether it's about product market fit, whether it's about really, for example, developing a tool that is user friendly, I need to look at the statistics, I need to look at the data, and I need to continuously educate myself. So just relying on some knowledge or some information that I knew a few weeks or months ago cannot be true. Let me think about a good example. For example, is now in the past it used to be enough if you get feedback from any club to just say, "Oh, guys, we need a feature which is there like this and this and this." This is just not enough nowadays. I need to come up with a detailed description. I need to think about the use cases. I need to come up with what we call a product requirement document. And I can even, for example, ask the AI to come up with initial wireframes so I can visualize these wireframes, share them again with the client, with the club, and ask the grounds manager, does this make sense? Is this helpful for you? And then get feedback on that. And only then really offer it to my developers. Because my developers are not in touch with the grounds manager. It's my job, so hence I need to do this. And that means you need to create somewhat different processes, and you need to encourage people to go outside of their comfort zone. Because if someone just likes to stick to a silo, well, it's just not enough.
It's not going to work that way, is it? I mean, it seems to me you're saying that the job's harder.
Well, I think AI has taken certain parts of what you used to do, which used to be potentially repetitive and also automate or boring part of your tasks, and is essentially forcing you to become more creative and think more about your processes.
Yeah.
day
And
to day.
that's a good thing, actually. I mean, it's harder, but it's a good thing, I would guess, isn't
Of
it?
course, it's what makes us human, right? And we need to know the limitations of the AI, which is the fact that if it has been taught in one way to think, then it will also spit out the ideas like that. But you need to come up with the original creative ideas.
Yeah, yeah. And let me ask you about something that's kind of related to that, and that is, to what extent has your network, the
Hmm.
people that you know, the people that you perhaps studied with, worked with, and so on, to what extent has that network facilitated you building your company? I mean, have other people played a big role in this? I mean, what tell us about your network?
Yeah, I think. I mean, my network was not in the turf management industry, and so in that sense, for example, I probably had a huge disadvantage to any other company that was started by an ex-grounds manager or somebody from the sports industry. My background used to be more from, let's say, an international background and more international studies, right, and international relations. So I would say my core advantage has rather been that I'm, let's say, culturally fluent across cultures.
Okay.
So, um, uh, for example, if we do sales in Europe and we sell to any football club, it requires you to go into the native language and into the native culture.
Yeah.
So, luckily, I speak, for example, Spanish, so that helps me in the Spanish market.
Yeah.
And I do know that when I'm going to the Netherlands, I fake my best Dutch, yeah, because there's just no other way. But it also is that the cultures function in a different way. Where, for
Yeah.
example, when we did our first sales in South America, it required a personal visit and it required a personal dinner and sitting down and getting to know the person.
Because that's how
Whereas,
they do business there, isn't it?
exactly, and if I would do that exact same thing in Germany, probably a groundsman would be wondering whether I'm trying to bribe him or something, right?
Yeah.
So just different cultures, different ways of how they function. And that's one part. And the other part of how my network has helped me, or how this approach has helped me, is that I'm not afraid at approaching people
Mm.
and doing mistakes. Yeah. So if I, for example, reached out to someone in a club and the grounds manager said, "Hey, mate, you should have just talked to me." Yeah, completely fine with apologizing, saying, "Hey, look, I'm not from the industry. This is my mistake. Can we still have a call? Is this fine by you?"
Yeah.
And I think that's another way of moving forward. As a startup, there's no way being out and as a leader or as a CEO who started as a founder, not being from the industry, I had to create all my network. I had to create my network within the industry.
Yeah.
What I got lucky about was those initial grounds managers that I met, for example, in Germany. They helped me and they supported me. They allowed me to actually connect with other grounds managers and to actually learn more about turf.
But your
Initially,
customers, if you like, helped you build relationships with other customers
of
as well.
course, and that's the main thing actually, because word of mouth. If you have a good product, right?
Yeah.
And so, for example, when I started the company, the first thing I did is I moved to Leipzig because RB Leipzig was our first pilot client, and I literally went for 9 months every morning, as if I was a grounds manager, into the shed, saw what they did, and thought about how I could improve it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that taught me a lot, from knowing what aerating or scarification is down to at that point doing trials with shade impact and disease risk,
Yeah.
and just being able to understand what's the reality. Because for example, if we would have developed a mobile app with very small buttons that doesn't work and muddy fingers, then mate, forget our business. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny how those little things are often really important, isn't it? Let me ask you about the other
Mhm.
side to that. I mean, I always think that surrounding yourself with smart people, building a network, is a smart move. To what extent have your values as an individual shaped the way that you've built the company? Because when we've spoken in the past, it strikes me that you've got a pretty clear sort of point of view about how you want to do this. I mean, have your values had a big impact?
I think to a certain extent, maybe best reflected is that we are a team of what, 15 people with 10 different nationalities,
Right.
based in Berlin and only speaking English in the company. And it's absolutely no requirement that you speak German. Perhaps actually I prefer if you speak another language or two, because we've got German already covered. So maybe that's one example I would say. The other one is that for me, it was clear that we should. We started with public funds, so there was no initial private investors, which meant a lot of work was always on, let's say, documenting what you're doing and coming up with a clear plan and approach for 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. So these are certain things. Bootstrapping it, I would say, was kind of my style. Just also because I didn't have the investor network or rich parents that could finance anything. And I would say that's probably how my values were reflected initially within the company.
And are all the people in the company mad about footy? I mean,
Yeah.
is there an element of they're all sports?
Oh no, that's a selection criteria.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm in an interview and look, what makes people stick with a startup that probably 90% of the startups fail? That probably means it's A, going to fail. B, that means you probably cannot get the most salary out. So I'm going to give you shares, but if your shares are worthless, well then why are you in that startup? Well, it's passion. And it has to be passion for the topic. And so everyone, and they not necessarily everyone is into footy. So our UI UX designer, for example, is from Pakistan and therefore obviously big into cricket. Yeah, couldn't care less about footy. And our Irish product manager is obviously into Gaelic football. So different sports is completely fine. Yeah, but some sort of a relationship to what we do should be there.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, that knowledge of all those other sports will help in the long run, won't it? Probably. Let me ask you about, and as you've built the business, have you had any real big surprises?
Oof, plenty. I sometimes feel like I did all of the mistakes in the 101, what you should not do as a founder mistakes. So I had an initial co-founder. We had a founders conflict. We had to get that resolved. That is number one reason why startups fail. Then we had a huge shitstorm a while ago, about a year ago, which was because I gave some sort of a provocative presentation at the Barca startup pitch, and my words were twisted. And next thing I knew, I was all over the press, even in the New York Times. So crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're famous.
I don't know well, famous for the wrong reasons, at least for those articles, because we were twisted that we said that that we mocked the former coach of Barcelona, Xavi, who was a big proponent of saying that pitch conditions matter and play a role, and he was always saying we need to level the playing field somehow. And I used one of those images which the Spanish press used against him, and said, hey, look, since Xavi has been out there, we all know that pitch conditions actually play a big role, and we guys essentially do what he's saying. And that was twisted down to German startup is making fun of legendary Barca coach. Yeah, and next thing you know, I'm all over the press, and our social media was havoc for a month.
This is a bit of an aside, but did you ever talk to him about it? What did he say?
No, I sadly haven't reached him, but I did ask him if I tried to reach out to him. Right. Because I think he would have been an amazing investor, and B, would have been a good client. Yeah, but now that being aside, I mean, we did those mistakes. We had a junior software developer team, which is also a big mistake, even more nowadays, and means we had to basically change our entire software team. We had sales guys hired, which was way too early because our product wasn't ready enough, and then cost us because they didn't bring in any clients. So yeah, we went through it all. I burned some really big clubs that I shouldn't have burned because we trialed too early.
Yeah, easy mistakes to make, I think. And
yep. Well,
I mean, all those things that you've described. I mean, you described them as mistakes rather than surprises, but I can see your point. They also create uncertainty for your people, don't they? I mean, how do you keep people focused given that in those circumstances? I mean, if you're on the front page of the Wall Street Journal or something, I mean, it's very easy to get distracted, isn't it? I mean, how do you keep your people focused given that level of uncertainty and excitement going on? And
yeah, I think, you picked probably the worst moment in time for team morale, which was the shitstorm. Yeah, because I was also on a holiday where I decided to take like a few days off after the that Barca pitch, and that holiday was obviously not a holiday at all. Yeah, and but I was not in the office, which meant it was very difficult to pick up team morale.
Yeah.
And so when I got back, I kind of obviously gave a motivational speech and kind of shone up our positive moments. So that's one part of the story. The other part, of course, is that I'm let's say I'm of course sharing all our wins, but if it's about negative news, such as, or if it's very difficult financial situation, fundraising is always what used to be always a topic. Nowadays, luckily not anymore. But when it used to be a topic, I used to not share that burden, but focus on getting it solved by myself. I mean, at the end of the day, if I'm the founder and majority shareholder, I might as well take up that burden. So I kept that out, and on the other hand, communicated as transparent as I thought was always helpful. I don't also want to induce fear into others. So none of my employees has signed up to become a founder. Hence, they should not have the same burden of risk, and they should be able to account for their salaries. So, for example, this has never been the case that I haven't paid any salary, but it has certainly been the case that I haven't paid myself salary for several months in a row.
Yeah.
These are the things which, however, I believe are part of being a founder. So I use it's kind of, at least my idea has always been that I need to be the first in and last out. Maybe that's not necessarily always right, because you don't want to show everyone else how you're going towards a burnout, and they also need to. But on the other hand, I think it is good to lead by example.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what's interesting about what you're saying to me is that, disasters happen when you least expect them, don't they? I mean, if you'd known that you were going to have this problem, you wouldn't have gone on holiday, would you? But you were. I mean, that's one of the things about the job, the CEO's job, is that stuff happens when stuff happens sometimes, and you just have to deal with what happens. You just have to, I mean, whatever it is, you just have to deal with what it is. And the other thing that, as my experience, is that it's never one thing. It's usually multiple things that cause.
Yes, of course. Yeah, of course. It's like a domino.
That makes it hard. Yeah.
Well, yes, but I would say that that's the crux is, of course, also as to kind of multitask, right? And to be able to prioritize even the pressure points, and to understand what needs an immediate email, what can wait until tomorrow, and what can I look at next week, because you'll always have an endless to-do list.
Yeah. I mean, even I've got an endless to-do
list. Yeah, everyone.
And I've been at it for a while. So I get you. Let me ask you about the flip side to that. I mean, you've talked a lot about mistakes and things. I mean, what would you say are the factors that have made the business successful? I mean, because it doesn't seem to me it's just luck. What would you say made it successful?
No, I think it's potentially similar to a good footballer. I mean, talent and luck, I give it 5%. The rest is persistency and discipline, and having a good team. I'm a true believer of my team, and selecting the right people, creating the right culture, where people are motivated by real passion, and then being a fair leader. So that's one. And then I would say, persistency definitely is a point. And of course, it was a good niche which we started off in. In our particular case, I would say the core competitive advantage which we have to date is that we are the only company in the field which has their own software developers. So every other software that is out there, which was built for groundsmen or greenkeepers, had been built by an agency, outsourced. Which meant that you come up with some requirements, you feed that to the agency feeds you version 1, if you're lucky, V2 and V3, and that's it, right? And we are at version, 100 something, and we're continuously shipping new features every week. And for example, if anyone nowadays really says it's a problem to give you a translated version of the software, or wants to charge you for that, then by default that he's working with an agency, because for any software developer, this is like a 5-minute task. So that's our key core competitive advantage. And we're, of course, expanding on that by adding new features, but also making the features user-friendly. So anyone can potentially come up with something which is vibe-coded and works for a day, but continuously improving a certain flow, so that I can give you an iPhone in your hand and it just works intuitively. That's because it was designed intelligently.
Yeah.
And that's what you pay the added amount in comparison to an Android phone, which was, well, made up by a developer and has very little user testing.
I mean, it's interesting you said that. I mean, I remember once upon a time having a developer that really did not want to make the product user friendly. I mean, they don't want to make it easy for people to use. I mean, which
Yeah.
is, you wouldn't believe that those things happen, but they do sometimes.
Oh,
You're absolutely right. You have to design it that way, don't you?
of course, and it's a classic, by the way. Yeah, it's a classic to not let developers who love to add features overload an app, right? Simplicity is key at some point. And particularly imagine how much simplicity is key if you're standing outside on a field, on a pitch, with, I don't know, rain or with super high sunlight, and you just need to get a task done. And you know it makes sense to log the activity, but you definitely just want to get it done quickly. Then simplicity certainly is key. So this is where I saw that everyone had kind of let down the grounds managers and greenkeepers out there, and felt that there was a potential.
Yeah, you found an opportunity, didn't you? You found something that perhaps somebody missed. Let me ask you about the. I mean, one of the things that struck me when we've spoken is you come across that you really enjoy doing what you do, and that was the way I've interpreted our conversations. You come across as really. I mean, what is it you enjoy about it? I mean, what is it? Because you come across as if you're having a lot of fun. Actually, is it the sport bit? Is it the team? Is it? I mean, what is it?
I mean, look, if you start a company and you're not enjoying it and it's not fun, then there's no way you're going to be doing this for a long time. Yeah, and there's no way you're going to be good at it. So. So prior to starting Turf Coach, right, when I was working, I did kind of business development, but I was relatively my own boss within Europe because I was the only one leading the European market. And for me, there's always been fun to be self-motivated and to engage into topics and to have continuous challenge. Now, certainly it can be overwhelming at times, of course, like any challenge, but I enjoy doing completely new things, right? I'm not a software developer by default, and I can now explain you that we're using Heroku, which is built up on AWS, and what a PRD means. Prior to that, I had no idea, and so I'm continuously educating myself and learning, and that's what I thrive and enjoy. And at the same time, I'm also learning how to delegate and to and work within teams more, and trust people and support them in their own development. And that is, I think, key to doing this. And you're always taught as a founder that it's a marathon, and that's just what I believe. And if you're not passionate about the subject and you're just thinking about an exit, then it's definitely not going to work.
Yeah. And let me pick up something that you just mentioned about developing your people. I mean, I talk to a lot of CEOs, and a lot of people say they think that you should develop your people, but when I say to them, well, what have you done to develop your people? I don't necessarily get very long answers. I mean, you've just mentioned the importance of developing your people. I mean, what would you say are the things? What do you do to develop your people? I mean, what sort of things do you do?
Starts on day one. Any employee which starts in the company new, we go to Union Berlin, which is the local first league club here, and we go for one day and we work with the grounds managers.
Wow,
that's day one. Yeah. Because if they don't know the reality, then it's not going to work. Our front-end developer helped me set up the weather station. Our UI UX developer was there. A designer was there with me when we placed the QR codes on the machines, and they saw the reality of those people who they're solving problems for. So that was the day one. Then what we do is bi-weekly AI workshops. That came from my CTO, which was, how can we introduce AI in our workflow? We started doing the same on the sales side. How can we use AI to support ourselves in coordinating and when to call whom and whom we have to reach out to? And so I think these are initial things. And then I try to nurture, let's say, cross-departmental communication. So, for example, even while they already have been on the job for a while, I take some of our developers or UI/UX designers to see certain grounds managers at certain locations and understand the problems, and vice versa. As I said, all our business development and agronomic staff nowadays has learned how to come up with initial designs, come up with documents that the developers can understand, even code themselves a bit, for example, to make shade analytics and so on.
So it's really about kind of getting people to get close to the customer, is what you're saying.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, you need to solve the problems of the customer, and for that, everyone ideally needs to understand how the customer thinks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if
I
not, you
think
come
that's
up to
very
these.
good I think that's very good advice, actually, that point about understanding how the customer thinks. If everyone understands how the customer thinks, you've got some chance of doing it right, haven't you?
Of course, and even then you'll still get it wrong, and you need to get rid of a button, or you need to get rid of a feature which was invented, or yeah, and double triple check. Yeah, but the main point here is, if you continuously develop and come up with new features, and you're not losing out to competitor, but you're essentially losing out to the status quo, which is often an analog system, it just meant you weren't good enough. Yeah, but it doesn't mean you were off or you were wrong, right? So that's kind of one of the things which keeps us motivated also in the office, to say it's not like we're really losing out to someone which built something better. It's more about perhaps our process wasn't correct, or perhaps certain features weren't there yet, which missed.
Yeah. Yeah. That kind of sort of continuous improvement really is what you're talking about.
And that is what I believe is key for any good software, right? If I look back at the initial smartphones or mobile phones we were using to what I use nowadays, of course, it's a completely different story.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's extraordinary that if you take mobile phones, I mean, I remember the very first mobile phone I saw, it was like a brick.
Yeah,
You look at them now and what they can do. I mean, 20 years or 30 years or whatever it is, it's extraordinary,
of
really.
course. I mean, I used to play Snake on a Nokia 3210, yeah, and nowadays, I mean, nowadays I wonder whether I still need that laptop or if I can just do it all on my
Yeah,
mobile phone. Yeah,
yeah. And let me ask you a couple of last questions before we wind
sure.
up. So, if you were starting from scratch,
Mm.
I mean, if you would go back to day one, starting from scratch, I mean, is there anything you'd do differently, do you think?
Oof, yes, but most of them have to do with finding the right people for the right team composition,
Oh, really?
right?
Right. Okay. So
Yes.
you've recruited the wrong people, is what you're saying?
Initially, yes. I had to. We almost changed the entire team because we were very junior people, and then you just do a lot of rookie mistakes. And for example, in the tech world, you call it tech debt. So you start paying, and you start basically fixing just bugs all the time, and you don't even get to any strategic level or new features because you're busy fixing problems that you created, and then probably patching up and adding more problems on the go. And so that was one of the biggest things we did with our new senior staff, was rewrite the full back end and front end, and essentially the full and the app. And that was a huge task. And we did that because what we had before was of lower quality. That was one. And the second one, I would have probably waited longer before I hire anyone on sales, and just try to get more people who are essentially more customer service oriented, and who are probably sit and be even closer to the client. So maybe I would have stayed a bit longer in Leipzig than just a year, but essentially be there for 2 or 3 years. Though it's doubtful that I get the right developers in that space, but to learn even more.
It's interesting you
Key.
talk about recruiting a salesperson too early. I mean, I've spoken to lots of people that make that mistake.
Yes.
The sales process needs to be pretty well developed before you can bring people in to do that. You have to be able to run it yourself, I think.
Yes, and you also want the unfiltered feedback from your
Yeah.
clients. And
Yeah.
if you get it filtered through the eyes of a salesperson, which perhaps it's just already a first filter, which you just want to avoid.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me ask you a similar sort of question.
Mhm.
If you were to offer a piece of advice to somebody starting out on a journey like yours, I mean, what
Yes.
advice would you offer them?
The first one is for sure for any initial founder, is to have a solid founders agreement based on modern standards. And that means cliff investing, and nobody owns anything of the company initially, and everyone has to essentially prove himself, because no matter how good you imagine that you know a person, it's the number one reason why startups fail. So be sure that you have an agreement which is solid, because else you will never get any investor money. You will never be able to essentially make this company grow and fly. And so that's the number one. And then the second thing I would say is, be as close to your client as possible, and don't imagine solutions for problems he doesn't even have. So it's funny because it's something which I think many guides somehow say, but you really need to understand what the problem is, and
Yeah.
and in the right way, right? So I don't know if I'm being told that, hey, I can't upload my weekly training calendar into your app, then the solution doesn't mean I create a button for him to upload it, or maybe that's only part of the solution. The other solution should be, what is the club using already to plan trainings, and how can I integrate that solution right away? Right? It's a bit like the Ford quote. If I would have asked people how to be quicker than on a horse, they would have told me put 10 horses instead of build a car. So you need to really think through what does the person want, what does he want, and how can I achieve that?
Yeah, what is the customer trying to achieve, and how can you help them? Isn't it?
Yeah, of course. And that you need to be close. You need to see his day-to-day routine. You need to see how he marks down things, what he's doing, what takes his real time, and how can you actually help him save time.
Yeah, two great pieces of advice there. Get an agreement with your founder in place, the co-founder in place, and understand your customer. I mean, both pretty solid pieces of advice there. So thank you for that, Christian. I mean, thank you for making a bit of time to come and have a chat. I mean, it's a really interesting. I mean, I like sport, so I'm a bit biased, but
Thanks, Paul.
I really like the proposition. I think it's a brilliant idea, and well done on getting it to where you've got it to, and good luck going forward. I mean, you've got an awful lot to go at. So, I mean, you've got plenty to keep you occupied. So good luck going forward. I mean, what a great thing to be working on.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for the invite. It's been a real pleasure. And we still got a lot to chew at, but I hope we're going to get there sooner.
I'm sure you will. All right. See you soon, Christian.
See ya. Thanks.
Bye-bye.